will you ever fit in? This is a very hard question to answer. Here's what I know. By being an international student for almost 7 years in a culture that I didn't grow up in, all right. Am I a part of the American culture? Yes, depending on how you defined the word culture, right? But do I feel like I belong in the society of a different group, of a different tradition? Yeah, here and there. I think just because I grew up in a different culture doesn't mean that I can't adapt and live in another culture. But this is why I started to think about this question. So the friend that I mentioned it a couple of videos ago that went to Korea, that moved to Korea recently, one of the questions I collected from her was, when do you start to feel acclimated? And that led me to think about the question of, fitting in to be a part of a culture, right? Because if I think back at my early days when I first got in here, I called the first couple of months the honeymoon, right? The honeymoon stages, you're essentially, oh, this is new, this is exciting. I want to travel to all the new places. I want to get to try all the restaurants. I want to go to all the cool places to shop, and everything is new and exciting. And after your honeymoon passes, you're getting into more of a rhythm of living regular life, like going to school or, start working. And then you started to have responsibilities, right? You started to have, homework that you need to do, quizzes you have to be prepared for, and work you have to also be prepared for as well. And then that's when you can get to feel like, oh, I'm actually living life. Maybe you're doing something different than what before you came to this country. Your title changes, right? The titles of being a college student, I didn't have that. I gained this new title when I arrived in America. I also gained the title an international student. And you don't start to feel like an international student or college student right away. When you first go to college, it takes a second to sit in. Right? It takes a second for you to really realize, oh, what does that even mean, being a college student, right? What does it even mean being an international student? What does it mean to live in a different country, right? It comes with time. That's what I'm trying to say. And ultimately, I think depending on what your goal is, if your goal is trying to, okay, I want to be a part of the culture, I want to stay here, I want to start a family here, then I think your brain started to do things that would help you to get to that goal if that's in the forefront of what you're trying to do, right? So for example, my biggest thing before I even came here was I wanted to go to college there. I want to look for a different life. I want to live a different life in America because there's more opportunities. So that was in the forefront of everything I do, right? I did volunteering because of that. I did I made a lot of friends because of that reason. I stopped hanging out with Chinese people because of that reason, right? So I started to do all these things because I wanted to stay here for the long term, and I wanted to be a part of the culture. So when you think about being part of the culture, are you a tourist? No, you're not, right? If you're living in another country, your tourist honeymoon is the first couple of months. Maybe for some people it lasts a little longer. For me, it was just maybe a month or two, because I lived in a dorm when I was in high school. I went to a boarding school when I was in China. So I had that excitement of going away from family, living somewhere else, having to make decisions on myself. So I got to adjust. The honeymoon went away really quickly for me. And I was just, in school, going to school, doing homework, and then problems started showing up, right? How do I communicate with people? How do I take buses? And I start running into these, life problems that people have to deal with. And then at some point, I start running into issues like, okay, well, my English is not sufficient enough to communicate what I need to communicate with people, so I have to level up my English. And I started making more friends, and I started to be a part of the community, which for me, it was part of the international student community, but also in a position where I can, serve them in a way, being, as an international mentor at my old job. So it's interesting because it's not, sorry, there's an ambulance passing by, but it's not an easy yes or no question. It depends on what your long-term goal is, right? If you're just there for short term, you're there for a year or two just to kind of gain some overseas experience, by all means, just you might not even need to feel like you're part of the community. You just need to be there to gain the experience, right? You don't have to try so hard to fit in, right? So it really comes down to what actually you're trying to achieve. And then this is one of those videos where I actually didn't do too much of note taking. I didn't think about this too much. I thought about when I first came here, that experience, that excitement, the honeymoon stage quickly went away, and I just thought about, okay, well, I actually do consider myself as part of the community. I do consider myself as, not to say American per se, but I do consider me as a resident who lives in this culture, and then I have to interact with people who are accustomed to the culture here. And then I think I possess some of those qualities that I might not possess when I first came here. So if that's your definition of fitting in, then I would say, yeah, at some point you are able to be a part of the culture and fit in, essentially. But I feel settled down just after a couple of months. After my honeymoon stage is past, I started to get into real life issues, real life problems I have to solve, right? Hopefully that answered or cleared some of the doubts people have in their heads. And then may this be a encouragement for people who are trying to live out here or in another country. I'll see you in the next one.